Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? The heat rolled off the tarmac in heavy waves that made the distant mountains shimmer like a fever dream. Corporal Marlowe Finch stood on the edge of the staging area, rifle case resting by her boots, watching the SEALs move with the kind of rhythm that only came from repetition. The thousandth mission that looked just like the first. Every motion smooth, precise, practiced. 3 days, that's how long she'd been here. 3 days of being background noise. They called her additional support personnel. No one had explained what that meant, not really, but she'd figured it out soon enough. It meant you carried extra ammunition. It meant you stayed behind. It meant you were a body in uniform that didn't matter. Furniture with a rifle. Lieutenant Commander Briggs passed her without a glance, eyes locked on the tablet in his hands. Behind him, Senior Chief Casper was running his team through another gear check, fifth one that hour. Every piece of equipment was handled with reverence, positioned where muscle memory could find it in darkness or chaos. Marlowe shifted the strap of her vest and glanced down at the rifle case at her feet. Inside was the weapon she had built herself, 2 years of patience, precision, and parts collected from bases that didn't officially exist. It wasn't just a rifle. It was her, a language she could speak fluently when words always seemed to fail. But no one here knew that. They didn't know her name beyond the patch on her uniform, didn't know what her redacted record meant, didn't care. To them, she was just another corporal who'd been dropped into their operation, for reasons lost somewhere in command bureaucracy. Casper finally noticed her. His gaze slid over her the way someone might glance at a fire extinguisher, noting its presence, never its story. He stopped a few feet away. "What are you carrying?" he asked. "Custom build," Marlowe said simply. He nodded once, long range. "Precision." Casper grunted, approval, indifference. It was impossible to tell. "You done much work in theater?" he asked, eyes on her weapon case, not her face. "Some," she said. It was the truth, in the same way saying the ocean was damp was true. "You'll be positioned about 800 meters back from our insertion point," he said. "Eyes open. Call out anything off. Try not to shoot friendlies." "Yes, Senior Chief." He nodded again and walked off, already forgetting her before he'd taken 3 steps. Marlowe watched them move around each other, easy and confident, a brotherhood welded together by experience, scars, and near-death moments she'd never be invited to share. They were water, she was stone. Still, separate, necessary but unnoticed. In the briefing tent, the air was stale and hot, thick with anticipation. A single light swung above the digital map, cutting faces into harsh planes and shadows. Marlowe stood at the back, always the back. Briggs tapped the glowing display, outlining their objective. "The target compound sits here, 3 structures, central courtyard, suspected HVT and security force." His voice was steady, procedural. "Standard direct action. We insert at 0300, breach from north and west simultaneously. Rules of engagement, weapons free on any hostile military-age males. Extraction back down the same route, LZ pickup at 0500. His finger shifted to a ridge behind the compound. "Corporal Finch will establish overwatch here. 900 meters to target. Provide early warning and cover our withdrawal if things go loud." Someone scoffed softly. 900, that's long range for suppressive. "Well within capability," Briggs said. He didn't look at her when he said it. Marlowe said nothing. 900 meters. To them, that was long range. To her, it was a warm-up. She made shots from distances that would make that feel like point blank. But they didn't need to know that, didn't want to know that. When the briefing ended, the SEALs dispersed, grabbing rest, gear, caffeine, whatever they needed before mission time. Marlowe found a quiet corner, cracked open her rifle case, and began her ritual. The weapon came apart with the grace of something loved. Every screw, every connection, every movement was muscle memory carved deep into her bones. She checked everything: scope, bolt, trigger group, chamber. Her father used to tell her, "A rifle's not a weapon until it trusts you back." She was tightening the final bolt when a shadow crossed her workspace. "Hell of a piece," a voice said. She looked up, young face, too young, Petty Officer Nash, call sign Coyote, maybe 25. "It does the job," Marlowe said. "You build it yourself." "Most of it." He crouched, eyes scanning the rifle like someone appreciating art. "That's a custom bolt assembly, and that trigger group, I've never seen one like it." "The break's clean at 2 pounds," she said, "like glass." He grinned. "I'm glad you're on our flank, Corporal Finch. That thing looks like it could reach out and touch someone from the next county." "If it needs to." He nodded, the grin fatting into something almost respectful. Then he walked away, leaving her alone with her rifle, the weight of quiet, and the realization that in less than 12 hours, she'd be sitting on a ridge while everyone else did the job she'd trained her whole life to do. That was fine, that was the mission. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the mission had other plans. She just didn't know it yet. The night came early in the mountains, thick, heavy, full of secrets. Marlowe sat pressed against the bulkhead of the helicopter, knees drawn tight, rifle secured between them. The seals across from her looked calm in that way only people familiar with chaos ever could. Some closed their eyes. Others murmured into calms or whispered prayers. Briggs kept checking his watch every 30 seconds, as if time would bend under discipline. The crew chief raised 5 fingers, 5 minutes. The air inside the cabin felt charged, that electric calm before motion, before purpose. Marlowe watched the darkness outside the open door, black on black, no stars, no moon, just void and wind. The helicopter banked hard, dropping altitude. Her stomach went weightless, then slammed back into her chest. Briggs stood, steadying himself with the overhead strap. The others followed, one after another, a silent choreography of muscle and memory. Marlowe stayed seated. She'd be last off. She wasn't part of their rhythm, not yet. The crew chief's hand hit her shoulder. "This is you." She rose, grabbed her rifle, moved to the door. 10 feet below, rough ground glowed in the red wash of cabin lights. She jumped. Hit, rolled, came up ready. The bird was already lifting away, rotors kicking dust into a storm that swallowed sound. Then silence. Not the comfortable kind, the kind that presses on your chest and listens to you breathe. Marlowe pulled down her night vision. The world turned green and ghost-like. The compound lay 900 meters below, 3 buildings around a courtyard, dark and still. Too still. She scanned through her scope. No heat signatures, no movement, not a single flicker of life. Something in her gut twisted. Her instincts whispered, "This isn't right." Her radio crackled. "Overwatch, this is ground team actual. We're at LZ beginning approach. Confirm in position." "In position," Marlowe whispered. "Good sight lines, no movement." "Copy. Maintain radio discipline unless critical. Actual out." The line went dead. She exhaled, settled deeper into her hide, adjusted the bipod, checked her watch. Time stretched. Minutes, maybe hours, the kind that crawl across your skin. Then, faint movement in the green world of her scope. 3 fire teams, shadows flowing uphill toward the compound. They moved like ghosts, barely human. It was beautiful in a way, precision and danger in motion. She tracked them, breath sinking unconsciously with their advance. At the gate, Briggs raised a hand, countdown with fingers. 3, 2, 1. The explosion was a bloom of light that turned her world white for half a heartbeat. The seals surged in. And then everything fell apart. The compound erupted in gunfire. Every window spat light. Every rooftop flared alive. Marlowe froze. She could see it all through the glass of her scope, seals dropping, scattering, shouting. The radio exploded with panic. Ground Team 2 taking heavy contact. Multiple casualties. Need immediate exfil. Ambush, ambush. Her hands tightened on the rifle. She was 900 meters away, too far to help, too close to ignore. She could see one of the SEALs go down hard. Another drag him toward a wall that offered no cover. Her instinct screamed, do something. But she wasn't supposed to. She was support personnel. She was a body with a rifle. Then another man fell, and another. Marlowe made her decision. She flipped off the safety, settled behind the rifle, and let training erase hesitation. One breath, one trigger press. The rifle kicked. A rooftop muzzle flash disappeared. Second shot, another rooftop went silent. Third, fourth, fifth. Through the scope, she watched chaos bend just slightly under the weight of precision. Voices filled her headset again, this time angry. Who the hell's firing from Overwatch? Who authorized that? Briggs. Marlowe ignored him, worked the bolt. Another target, another shot. Nobody authorized it, she said finally into the radio. But unless someone does something, you'll have 300 dead SEALs in 5 minutes. Static, then silence. She took another shot, and another. Below, in the killing field of that courtyard, hope began to flicker. It wasn't much, but it was enough. And as the rifle steadied in her hands, as breath and movement became one, Marlowe Finch, the ignored corporal, the quiet shadow, became the only thing standing between 300 men and annihilation. And for the first time that night, the silence in her headset wasn't loneliness. It was purpose. How long could one person hold back an army? The courtyard below was chaos, green fire through her scope, tracer rounds streaking in every direction, bodies dropping, dust lifting off the ground like smoke from hell itself. The SEALs had been swallowed whole by the ambush. The perfect machine they were on the tarmac was gone, replaced by survival, raw, desperate human. Marlowe's world had narrowed to a single circle of glass. Through it she saw everything, and nothing else existed. She worked the bolt, chambered, fired. Another rooftop muzzle flash vanished. Breathe. Exhale. Fire. A window flash she centered, squeezed. Down. The math lived in her blood. Distance, wind, humidity, barometric drop, Earth's curvature, all computed without thought, without effort. And for every perfect calculation, a life ended. Her radio crackled again, Briggs' voice, sharp and angry. Overwatch, stand down, you're not cleared to engage, you'll hit friendlies. She ignored him. I said stand. His voice was cut off by a scream, not his, someone else. Marlowe focused, adjusted, fired. Silence. Her hands were steady, but her chest felt tight. There was a moment between shots where she felt something inside her waver, not fear, but weight. The weight of what it meant to decide who lived and who didn't. Then she saw a rocket tube rise behind a wall. Target acquired, trigger pressed. The man fell before he ever fired. Overwatch, Briggs' voice returned, lower now, not anger, disbelief. Was that you? Copy, she said. Keep your men moving, they're boxed in. For a second only static, then quietly. Keep shooting. She did. Her scope painted the night with stories she'd never forget. One man dragging another. A medic wrapping a tourniquet with trembling hands. Another SEAL firing blind around a corner, praying not to be hit. Marlowe made each prayer count. She was through her second magazine when the sound of her heartbeat finally broke through the noise. Not fear, just rhythm. Life reminding her she was still here. Radio chatter shifted. Enemy pulling back north wall. Confirmed west pressure dropping. Whoever's firing from Overwatch, keep doing it. Coyote's voice came through, breathless. She's saving us. Whoever's up there, she's saving us. Marlowe didn't answer. She was already shifting positions, sliding 10 feet left through the rocks, making herself a harder target. The enemy had caught on, she could feel it. The rounds snapping over her head weren't random anymore. They'd triangulated her ridge. Overwatch, incoming suppression fire. She could hear it now, a storm of lead cutting through the air around her. Pebbles exploded near her face, stinging her skin. She stayed low, slow breaths. The rule was simple. If you could breathe, you could shoot. A machine gun flared from the second story. She put a round through it. Another soldier stepped up to replace him. She dropped him too. Again. 20 rounds gone. Another magazine. The sky over the compound flashed as tracers sliced upward, the SEALs calling for air support, desperate, pinned. But the response came back cold. Negative, air assets 25 minutes out. Marlowe did the math. At this rate, they had maybe 5. She whispered to herself, almost like prayer. 5 minutes, that's all I need. And then she worked. Every shot a heartbeat, every heartbeat a choice. Wind shifted, she adjusted half a mil, shot broke clean, target fell backward off a wall. 300 meters away, a figure with a grenade launcher ran for cover. She led him 2 feet, pressed, fired. The grenade fell short and detonated in his hands. Marlowe blinked against the flash. She didn't look away. Her radio caught Briggs again, voice rough, strained, blood in his words. Ground team actual to Overwatch. You just saved our north element. Keep firing. She could hear gunfire closer to her now, the enemy shifting positions, climbing, looking for the shooter who was rewriting the outcome of their perfect ambush. Marlowe shifted again, dragging her rifle a few feet, sighting over new terrain. She caught a flash movement on the ridge opposite, counter-sniper. Her breath froze. One miss and she was done. She steadied, calculated the mirage from the heat of his barrel. He fired first, missed. The round struck rock 2 feet from her face. Marlowe didn't flinch. She let the recoil roll through her, the reticle settle back into place and pressed the trigger. The distant figure slumped sideways, lifeless. Counter-sniper down, she murmured. Coyote's voice again, cracked and awed. One shooter, 900 meters in the dark, and she hasn't missed once. Silence on comms, then Briggs low and steady. Overwatch, keep shooting. Her throat felt tight for the first time that night, not from fear but something harder to name, recognition, acceptance. She burned through her third magazine, 18th shot, 19th, 20th. Through her scope, the tide began to turn. The SEALs were moving again, wounded carried, formations reforming under fire. The enemy, once confident, was now disoriented, firing into shadows. And then a new sound. Distant rotors. Air support. Marlowe almost laughed, a short, sharp sound that felt like relief. This is Eagle One, visual on compound, seeing heavy thermal signatures. This isn't just an HVT site, it's a staging area. You've got a battalion down there. Copy, Briggs replied. We're combat ineffective. We need extraction now. Hold 5 minutes, we'll cover. Marlowe reloaded, whispered to herself again. 5 minutes. She set up, breathed, fired. A man on a rooftop, down. A vehicle rolling into position, tire shot out, driver down. Each round measured, each decision exact. The rifle's barrel shimmered with heat now. Her shoulder ached from recoil. Overwatch, Coyote called. They're retreating. She shifted, squinted through the haze. He was half right, some were retreating, others were repositioning. They'd realized where she was. The first rounds came in seconds later, snapping overhead, hitting the stones around her. She ducked behind the rock, heartbeat pounding in her ears. The silence was gone. She could hear them, the enemy shouting orders, their rhythm tightening, professional now. Whoever commanded them knew what they were doing. They were going to flank her. She slid left again, 20 feet downslope, moving like shadow, barely sound. A round grazed the rock by her head, another ricocheted. She rolled into a depression, settled her bipod against dirt, sighted up again, and shot the muzzle flash that had just tried to kill her. The mountain swallowed the sound. Then nothing. Through the dust, she could see the SEALs moving toward the extraction point, helicopters hovering like salvation itself. They were going to make it. She switched channels. Ground Team Actual, this is Overwatch. You're clear to LZ. Enemy suppressed. Copy that, Briggs replied. We're loading wounded first. The radio buzzed with quick, efficient voices now. The panic was gone. Marlowe allowed herself one deep breath. Her trigger finger trembled, not from fear, from exhaustion. Then she caught movement through the scope. Rooftop launcher. Not yet, she whispered. She dialed 0.5 mil for range. The shot felt long even by her standards. She took it anyway. The rocket dropped with the man before it ever fired. Dust rose in a cloud. Silence. Overwatch, all personnel aboard, Briggs called. What's your extraction plan? She looked at the valley below, 2 kilometers of open ground, still crawling with hostiles. There isn't one, she thought. Then keyed her mic. Too far to make it before you're airborne, you go. I'll evade and call pickup once I'm clear. Negative, we don't leave people behind. Sir, you've got wounded who won't make it if you delay. I'll be fine. Silence, then quietly. Copy that, Overwatch. Air support will cover. Get yourself to grid 3742. We'll have a bird waiting. A pause. And Finch, you saved 300 lives tonight. We'll remember that. The rotors thundered again. The birds lifted, banking south. Dust swirled, catching the rising light of dawn. Marlowe stood slowly, her rifle hanging loose at her side. The compound below was eerily quiet now. Bodies, smoke, echoes. She slung her weapon, adjusted her pack, started north along the ridge. 5 kilometers to the extraction grid, 2 hours until full daylight. She smiled barely. That's doable. Behind her, faint voices rose, foreign, angry, searching. They'd found her brass, found her trail. They were coming. She didn't rush. Marlowe Finch moved like smoke, like shadow, through the broken light of morning. She'd saved 300 men and painted the biggest target of her life. But there was a stillness in her heart now, not peace exactly, something sharper. Purpose. Because in the end, she wasn't fighting for orders or medals or recognition. She was fighting for the people who'd walked into hell thinking no one had their back. Now they knew better. And somewhere far below, in a courtyard still echoing with the memory of gunfire, the wind carried the story of a single rifle on a distant ridge, and the woman who refused to let 300 brothers die alone. How far can one person go before fear stops being fear and just becomes focus? The sun was climbing, brushing the mountains in light that made everything look too calm, too beautiful for what had just happened. Marlowe moved fast but not reckless. Every sound, every shadow was a potential threat. The ridge ahead stretched for miles, sharp, fractured, and exposed. She stayed low, using the terrain the way a painter uses shade, tracing lines that made her invisible. Her boots whispered over sand and stone. Each breath measured, each step calculated. Behind her, faint echoes of shouting carried through the air, distant but growing. They'd found her trail. She ducked into a shallow wash, crouching low, letting her breathing settle. Dust stuck to her lips. The smell of cordite and heat still clung to her gear. Her radio crackled faintly. Overwatch, this is air support, a calm voice said. We have you on thermal. You've got multiple hostiles converging 3 directions. Recommend you move west immediately. She keyed her mic. Already doing that, how many? Roughly 40 personnel. They're fanning out. You've got maybe 15 minutes before they box you in. 40. Marlowe glanced at her remaining ammo, 3 magazines, 38 rounds total. She smiled, dry and humorless. Not enough to win, she muttered, but enough to make them think twice. She crawled deeper into the wash, wedging herself between 2 boulders. It wasn't comfort, it was survival. Her camouflage pattern blended perfectly into the rock's shadow. To the naked eye, she wasn't even there. The world narrowed to silence again. Her mind started counting heartbeats, seconds, breaths, the rhythm of waiting. Then voices, close. 6, maybe 7 men, moving in a search line. The sound of metal against rock, boots grinding in dust. They were good, coordinated, professional, but they weren't her. One stepped right above her, silhouette cutting across the sky. He scanned forward, never down. Amateur mistake. Always check the low ground. She stayed still, barely blinked. He moved on, calling out to the others. They passed the line sweeping east. She waited, counted to 60, then to another 60. When the last echo of movement faded, she slid out from her hiding place, crawling uphill through the shadowed side of the ridge. She changed direction west, not north. Every tracker expected the shortest route to extraction. She learned long ago to never be predictable. The ground was cruel, loose shale, jagged stone, dry brush that sliced her hands. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Her radio hissed again. Overwatch, this is ground team actual. Air support is prepping a diversion. Hold position until we give the signal. Copy that, she whispered. Then faintly at first, a sound like thunder. Jets. They came screaming over the valley, low and fast, shaking the earth. Marlowe looked up 2 FA-18s, sunlight flashing off their wings. The roar vibrated in her bones. The bombs hit seconds later. The explosion rolled across the mountains, echoing forever, fire blooming over the compound she'd saved the seals from. Shockwaves rippled through the air, scattering dust like a sandstorm. The enemy froze. She could hear them shouting, confused, disoriented. The diversion was working. Move now, Overwatch, Briggs' voice ordered. You've got a window. Marlowe rose, sprinting. Not fast enough to make noise, but fast enough to matter. Her legs burned, her lungs ached. She covered a kilometer in 10 minutes, then another half. The ridge narrowed, sloping into a jagged incline that demanded both hands. She slung her rifle across her chest and climbed. Handhold, breathe, step, grip. Don't look down. Halfway up, she slipped, a stone dislodged, tumbling noisily into the canyon below. She froze. Silence, then distant voices again. They'd heard. She pushed harder, clawing her way up the rock face, boots scraping, gloves tearing. Finally, the top. And that's when she heard them. Rotors. Not the enemy, not this time. Apache. The attack helicopter swung into view, banking low over her position. The pilot waggled his wings, a gesture as old as war itself. We see you. We've got you. Her radio came alive. Overwatch, this is Eagle 2. You're 1 kilometer from extraction point. Hostiles behind you, but you're ahead of them. Keep moving. She ran. The plateau stretched out before her, flat, sun-bleached, empty. The landing zone was somewhere beyond the next ridge. Her legs screamed for rest, but there was no room for that. Every second counted, every second stolen from the people chasing her. Movement. To her right, 3 figures emerging from behind a rock formation, rifles raised. They flanked ahead. The lead man shouted something, foreign words, sharp with adrenaline. Marlowe dropped to one knee. No time for the scope, no calculations, just instinct. She fired from the shoulder center mass. The man dropped. His partner flinched, tried to duck behind cover. She worked the bolt, fired again, hit. The third dove behind a boulder and opened up with bursts of automatic fire. Bullets whined past her head, snapping the air. Marlowe slid into a shallow depression, dirt biting her palms. She steadied her rifle, found the edge of the boulder in her scope, waited. Patience, always patience. Seconds stretched, her heart slowed. The shooter leaned out, searching for her. Marlowe fired. The round caught his shoulder, spinning him backward. He dropped his rifle, screaming. She didn't stay to watch. She moved fast, climbing the last slope toward the extraction point. Eagle 2, this is Overwatch. Engage 3 hostiles, continuing to LZ. Copy, we've got eyes on. You're 200 meters out, make it quick, they're closing in. She could see it now, a small clearing, dust swirling beneath spinning rotor blades. The helicopter's door gunner waved her forward. She pushed harder. Every muscle in her body protested, but she didn't stop. 100 meters, 50. The gunner's voice over the radio. We've got to lift, you're almost there. The helicopter began to rise, rotors screaming, kicking up a wall of dirt. Marlowe leapt, grabbing the crew chief's extended hand. He hauled her aboard as the aircraft surged upward. The world dropped away beneath her. She rolled onto the floor of the cabin, gasping, coated in dust and sweat. The smell of aviation fuel and burnt powder filled the air. And when she looked up, she froze. Every face staring back at her was familiar. Briggs, Casper, Coyote, the SEALs she'd saved. They sat in stunned silence for half a heartbeat. Then someone started clapping. One, then another, until the sound filled the cabin like thunder. Briggs knelt beside her, eyes studying her face, the dust, the exhaustion, the faint tremor in her hands. "Welcome aboard, Corporal Finch," he said quietly. "We need to have a talk about who you really are." The helicopter banked east, away from the mountains, away from the smoke still rising behind them. Marlowe stared out the open door as the desert rushed by below, endless, quiet, golden under the rising sun. She survived, barely. But the silence that settled over her now wasn't peace. It was something else. The awareness that survival wasn't victory. It was just permission to keep going. Briggs sat across from her, face streaked with dust and blood that wasn't his. His expression was calm, now curious, almost reverent. "Your record's redacted," he said finally. "Everything before 3 days ago is above my clearance. You want to tell me why a corporal with no official history can shoot like that?" Marlowe said nothing. She learned a long time ago that silence was its own kind of armor. Briggs continued, voice softer. "I made some calls. The people who answered didn't say much. But one thing stood out, everyone I talked to used the same word." He leaned forward. "They said you were the best." Marlowe's hands were still shaking slightly. She pressed them flat against her thighs to steady them. "I was just doing my job," she said. Casper let out a rough laugh, not mocking, just amazed. "Your job isn't to single-handedly hold off a battalion with a custom rifle from 1,000 yards out. Your job was to watch." "Plans change," she said quietly. "Plans change," Casper repeated, shaking his head. "You understand that what you did out there isn't just skill, right? It's impossible." She met his eyes. "It's not impossible if you train for it." Briggs looked at her, really looked. Where does someone train for that? Marlowe hesitated, then answered simply. "In places that don't exist, with people who aren't there, doing things that never happened." Silence. The kind that feels like truth settling between two people who finally see each other clearly. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly. Inside, something changed. For the first time since she'd arrived, Marlowe wasn't invisible. She wasn't the background soldier with the quiet voice and redacted file. She was something else. Something they couldn't quite name yet. The helicopter continued east, climbing above the heat and dust. Coyote leaned forward from across the cabin. "Ma'am," he said softly, "I watched your shots through my scope. I've worked with the best. I've never seen anything like it." Marlowe didn't respond. She didn't know how. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, steady, patient. "The best shooters aren't the ones who want to be seen. They're the ones who disappear after the shot." She turned back to the open door. The mountains were shrinking behind them, swallowed by distance and sunlight. Below, the valley where hundreds should have died was silent again. War was strange that way. It could look peaceful, even while it carried the ghosts of everything it had just taken. Marlowe didn't believe in luck. Only timing, and the will to act when no one else would. The radio clicked once, a new voice, calm, commanding. "Corporal Finch, this is Captain Oakes. Report to command post upon landing. We have something to discuss." She didn't know it yet, but that voice and what waited on the other side of that conversation would change everything. The helicopter descended toward the forward base. Marlowe checked her rifle one last time. Chamber clear, safety on, bolt locked. Some habits never stopped. As the landing skids touched down, she whispered, almost too quiet to hear, "Thanks, Dad." And for the first time in a very long time, she allowed herself to feel something close to peace. Not because it was over, but because it was. What happens after you save 300 men, but no one's supposed to know you did? The forward operating base was awake before dawn, every corner humming with quiet tension. Helicopters touched down, medics ran stretchers through dust, and somewhere in the organized chaos, Corporal Marlowe Finch stepped off her bird like a ghost, returning from a war no one would officially record. She looked around. No one saluted, no one cheered. Only eyes, watching, measuring. Word had spread fast. "Finch," someone whispered as she passed, "that's her. The one from the ridge. They said she killed 40 men by herself." Rumors always grow faster than truth. Marlowe didn't look at them. She just walked one step after another, rifle slung tight against her chest, her face unreadable. Inside the command tent, the air was heavy and cold from the generators. A dozen screens flickered with live feeds and satellite images. The war never slept. It just changed shape. Captain Oakes stood near the far table, older, measured, eyes like steel under tired brows. He didn't look up as she entered. "Corporal Finch," he said, "sit." She sat. Briggs and Casper stood off to the side, silent. They'd been ordered not to speak during the debrief. Their faces said everything: pride, confusion, something close to guilt. Oakes finally looked at her. "You disobeyed direct orders." Marlowe said nothing. He studied her for a long moment. Then, "And in doing so, you prevented the deaths of 300 SEALs." Still, she said nothing. Oakes exhaled, leaned against the table, folded his arms. "Tell me, Corporal, why?" Marlowe's eyes lifted slowly. "Because the order was wrong." Briggs flinched just slightly. Oakes' expression didn't change. "You understand how dangerous that answer is?" "Yes, sir." "And yet you're standing by it." "I am." Oakes nodded slowly, packing now. "Do you know how many soldiers have said that to me? Hundreds. Most of them didn't survive long enough to regret it." She didn't respond. He stopped packing and turned toward her. "What makes you different?" Marlowe looked at him, not defiant, just steady. "I didn't follow instinct. I followed information. I had a better view. I saw what no one else saw." "And you decided you knew better than your commanding officer." Her jaw tightened. "No, sir. I decided I knew what was right." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut air. Oakes stared at her for a long time, then smiled just faintly. "You sound like him." Marlowe frowned. "Sir." "Your father," he said, "Lieutenant Colonel Ezra Finch." The world seemed to pause. Oakes nodded at her reaction. "Don't look so surprised. We knew who you were the moment you set foot on this base. The name may be scrubbed from your record, but nothing stays buried forever." Briggs turned slightly. He hadn't known. None of them had. Oakes continued, voice softer now. He trained some of the best snipers this branch ever produced. Then he went dark. No discharge, no transfer, just gone. And a few years later, your file appears redacted, incomplete, full of holes big enough to drive an armored column through. Marlowe said quietly, "My father's story isn't mine." "No," Oakes said, "but it explains a lot about you." He walked closer, stopping just in front of her. "You understand something most soldiers never will, that orders and morals don't always align, and that sometimes saving lives means breaking the rules." Marlowe looked up. "Are you saying I did the right thing?" Oakes' mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I'm saying the right thing depends on who's writing the report." He turned to Briggs. "You filed yours yet?" "No, sir," Briggs said. "Good, don't. I'll take it from here." Oakes faced Marlowe again. "As of now, the events on that ridge never happened. Officially, the team was ambushed. Air support neutralized the threat. All personnel accounted for. No heroics. No miracles, no Corporal Finch." Marlowe nodded slowly. "Understood." Oakes studied her face again. "You don't look surprised." "I've read enough reports to know how truth works, sir." He chuckled quietly. "Your father used to say the same thing." Marlowe blinked, then asked softly, "You knew him?" Oakes nodded. "He was my instructor 20 years ago. Taught me that the deadliest weapon isn't the rifle, it's the conscience of the one holding it." The words lingered in the air. Marlowe felt something tighten in her chest. Not pain exactly, something deeper. She'd spent years trying not to think about him. The man who'd vanished without explanation, whose teachings lived on in muscle memory and the echo of every shot she'd ever taken. Oak's voice cut through the memory. "You've got two choices, Finch. I can sign off your file as non-compliant, disciplinary review, possible discharge, or—" He paused, letting the weight of the word settle. "You can come with me." Marlowe frowned. "Where?" "To a place that doesn't exist. A unit that doesn't appear on any roster. We call it the Guardian Program." Briggs and Casper exchanged glances. The name meant nothing to them, but to Marlowe it stirred something old. "I've heard whispers," she said. "Good," Oakes replied. "That means you understand the gravity. We deal with situations that require moral discretion, not blind obedience. We step in when bureaucracy hesitates. You fit that profile." "So you want me to work for you," she said carefully, "because I didn't follow an order." "No," Oakes said, "because you followed your conscience." Silence again. Then Marlowe asked, "And if I say no?" Oakes shrugged. "Then you disappear back into the system, maybe a desk job, maybe reassignment, maybe nothing. Either way, the world forgets your name." Marlowe looked down at her hands, scarred knuckles, dirt under her nails, calluses from years of holding onto a weapon that had defined her life. "I never wanted them to remember my name," she said. Oakes smiled faintly. "Then maybe you're exactly what we need." He straightened, reaching for a folder on the table. "Take 48 hours, think about it. You've earned rest, Finch." She rose, saluted, and turned to leave. As she reached the exit, Oakes spoke again, voice lower, almost an echo. "For what it's worth, your father made the same choice once." She didn't turn around. "Then he knew what it cost," she said. Outside, the light hit her like a wave, bright, unforgiving. The base buzzed with activity, but she walked through it like a ghost. The seals she'd saved crossed her path near the medical tents. Coyote caught her eye and froze. Then, without a word, he raised 2 fingers to his brow, a small salute, subtle, private. She nodded back, no words. That night she sat alone on the edge of the base wall, looking out at the dark horizon. The stars were cold and silent, scattered like bullet holes across the sky. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, it came heavy and full of ghosts. She dreamed of the ridge again, the flash of muzzle fire, the recoil in her shoulder, the scream in her earpiece that never stopped. And beneath it all, her father's voice. If you ever find yourself choosing between orders and lives, choose the ones who can't defend themselves. The rest will understand later. She woke with tears she didn't remember earning. The next morning, the sun rose on another day that looked like peace but wasn't. A soldier brought her a message. Captain Oakes requests your presence. When she entered the operations building, Oakes was waiting by a transport vehicle, a nondescript black SUV with no markings. Made your decision? He asked. Marlowe nodded once. Yes, sir. And I'll go. Oak's eyes softened. You'll regret it. I already do. He chuckled. Then you're ready. She climbed into the vehicle, the door shut behind her. No insignia, no destination, no explanation. As the SUV rolled out of the base, the world she'd known, the one with rules, structure, and ranks, began to fade in the rearview mirror. Ahead, the road stretched toward the unknown. And for the first time since the ridge, Marlowe let herself wonder what came next. Because maybe saving 300 men wasn't the end of her story. Maybe it was just the reason someone finally noticed she existed. The vehicle disappeared into the horizon, carrying with it a woman the world wasn't supposed to remember and couldn't afford to forget. And somewhere deep down she knew this was only the beginning. What happens when the people who recruited you know more about your life than you ever did? The convoy drove through the desert for hours, silent except for the steady hum of the engine. Marlowe sat in the back seat, helmet off, rifle locked between her knees. Captain Oakes hadn't spoken since they left the base. He didn't need to. Whatever waited at the end of that road wasn't something words could prepare her for. They reached a canyon just after dusk. The SUV rolled to a stop before a rock face that looked like every other stretch of sandstone for 50 miles. Then the rock moved. Hydraulic doors, disguised as earth, opened with a hiss of dust and steel. The facility beneath was lit in a cold blue glow, sterile, humming, alive. No insignia, no flags, just corridors and cameras. "Welcome to Guardian Command," Oakes said as they stepped into the elevator. Or, officially, nowhere. The descent took a full minute. Marlowe felt the pressure change in her ears. When the doors opened, the air smelled like metal and ozone. Rows of people in unmarked uniforms passed by, scientists, analysts, operatives whose faces looked carved from the same material as the walls. No one saluted. No one asked questions. Oakes led her through a biometric gate. "From this moment forward," he said, "your old record ceases to exist. You're not Army, you're not even visible. You operate only when the government can't or won't." Marlowe glanced at him. "And what exactly do you operate on?" "Decisions," he said, "the kind no one else wants to own." They stopped at a glass door marked Psych Eval, Sector 3. Inside waited a woman with silver hair and eyes that saw too much. "Captain, I'll take it from here." Oakes nodded once. "She's yours, Doctor." Then he left. The room was small, one table, two chairs, and a single camera in the corner. The doctor motioned for Marlowe to sit. "I'm Dr. Hale," she said. "Behavioral analysis and stress evaluation. Before we begin, anything you say here is classified beyond top secret. Speak freely or not at all. Your choice determines clearance." Marlowe sat silent. Dr. Hale smiled faintly. "Most soldiers start talking after the third minute of silence. You lasted 4. "I wasn't timing," Marlowe said. "You were." Hale leaned forward. "Tell me about the ridge." Marlowe's jaw tightened. "You've read the report." "I want your report." So Marlowe told her. The words came slow at first, technical, detached, then heavier, more human. By the time she described the moment she decided to fire against orders, her voice was barely above a whisper. When she finished, Hale just studied her. "Do you regret it?" Marlowe shook her head. Regret gets people killed. Then what keeps you awake? Marlowe hesitated. That I didn't start sooner. Hale wrote something down, and your father. The air thinned. What about him? He trained the first Guardian team, Hale said quietly. He walked away 15 years ago. Never filed resignation, never came home. We assumed you knew. Marlowe's throat closed. I didn't. Hale nodded as if expecting that. You're here in part because of him. Because whatever he saw, whatever made him leave, left its mark on you. We need to know if you'll follow the same path. Marlowe met her gaze. If he walked away, he had a reason. Maybe he saw something he couldn't live with. Can you? The question hung in the air. Marlowe answered slowly. I can live with the truth. I can't live with silence. Hale closed the folder. Then you'll fit in just fine. They didn't give her a uniform. They gave her a slate-gray flight suit with no rank, no name, and a small patch, a white circle crossed by a single black line. Balance, judgment, the symbol of the Guardians. Training wasn't drills. It was evaluation through exhaustion, obstacle courses that ended in moral puzzles, simulations where every choice had collateral damage. One test placed her in a virtual village. She was told to neutralize a target carrying a bomb. When she fired, the target dropped, and the child behind him died too. A voice over the speaker asked, "Do you call that success?" Marlowe stared at the holographic dust. "No," she said, "but it was necessary." Necessary doesn't mean right. I never said it did. They noted that answer too. Days blurred, sleep was rationed, meals were fuel. The Guardians weren't building soldiers, they were sculpting moral instruments, tools that could think, disobey, and still live with what followed. Late one night, she wandered into the observation deck above the firing range. A wall of glass looked out over miles of desert. Behind her, monitors tracked ballistic trajectories in real time. Captain Oakes appeared beside her, coffee in hand. "How's the acclimation?" Marlowe shrugged. "You mean the indoctrination?" He smirked. "Fair point." They stood in silence for a moment. Below them, a trainee missed 3 shots in a row. The instructor barked something over the loudspeaker. Oakes said quietly, "Your father used to stand here too. Same stance, same look." Marlowe kept her eyes on the range. "Then maybe I should ask what made him leave." Oakes nodded. "You'll get that chance soon." She turned. "He's alive." Oakes didn't answer, just took a sip of coffee, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Some truths find you when you're ready." Then he walked away. Weeks passed. Missions appeared on screens, but none were assigned to her. Observation only. She studied patterns, rescue ops that never happened, satellite images of conflicts that didn't exist on paper. Every operation ended the same way, success with silence. The Guardians erased problems, then erased themselves. One evening, she was summoned to briefing room B inside. A single dossier waited on the table. Her name was stamped across it. Oakes entered. "Your first deployment." Marlowe opened the folder. Inside, photographs of a compound, coordinates in Eastern Europe, and a single black and white image that froze her breath. It was her father. Older, bearded, eyes hollow, standing beside men wearing the same white circle insignia. "What is this?" she whispered. Oakes answered softly. "A rogue cell, Guardians who broke from command 15 years ago. We lost contact until last month." "And he's with them." Oakes nodded. "Intelligence suggests they went underground after refusing a direct order. Something about a civilian target they wouldn't neutralize. The agency buried the incident, but he's alive." Marlowe stared at the photo, throat tight. "You're sending me after him." "We're sending you to bring him in, alive if possible." She looked up sharply. "And if it's not possible?" Oakes met her eyes. "Then you finish what he started." The words landed like a shot. She closed the folder slowly. When do we leave? 0300. You'll have a four-person team. They'll think it's a routine capture. Only you know the real target. Marlowe stood. He won't come willingly. Oak's expression softened. Neither would you. The transport plane roared through clouds before dawn. The world below was a smear of gray forests and fog-covered hills. Inside, Marlowe checked her rifle one last time. Across from her, the team geared up, 3 operatives she'd trained beside but never spoken to beyond mission code. No one asked questions. Guardians didn't. As the red light blinked overhead, she felt that old stillness again, the calm before purpose. But this time, purpose felt heavier. She wasn't saving lives tonight. She was chasing a ghost who shared her blood and her silence. The rear ramp opened. Cold air rushed in. The world tilted. They jumped. The parachute snapped open above her, the ground rushing up like memory. Trees swallowed them whole. Marlowe landed hard, rolled, came up crouched, rifle ready. Her boots sank into wet moss. The air smelled of pine and rain. The team formed a perimeter. Comms crackled softly. Raven 1 in position, moved to waypoint. They advanced through the forest, shadows among shadows. The compound appeared hours later, half-buried concrete, antennas jutting from the ground like broken bones. Faint light flickered in one window. Marlowe raised her scope. Movement inside, 2 guards, routine. She whispered, 2 targets north entrance, silent approach. The team nodded, spreading out. It was clean, precise, over in seconds. Inside, the hall smelled of dust and oil. Maps lined the walls, global coordinates, red strings, handwritten notes, a command post for ghosts. And then she saw it. A photo tacked to the board, her, years younger, standing beside her father at a range. The edges were worn, folded, carried. Her throat tightened. Clear left, one of the team whispered. Clear right. Marlowe turned a corner and froze. A man stood at the far end of the corridor, hands empty, eyes steady. Older, thinner, but unmistakable. Hello, Marlowe, he said quietly. Her rifle wavered for the first time in years. Dad. He smiled, weary and sad. I told them you'd come. Her voice was barely breath. They said you went rogue. He nodded once. I did, but not against them, against what they became. Footsteps echoed behind her, her team closing in. Ezra Finch raised his hands. We don't have much time. You need to choose who you really serve. Marlowe's radio hissed. Raven 1 target confirmed, standing by for authorization. She hesitated, rifle between them, orders in her ear, truth in her chest. Her father whispered, the Guardians aren't protecting the world anymore, Marlowe. They're controlling it. Outside, thunder rolled across the forest. Inside, silence pressed like gravity. And for the second time in her life, Marlowe Finch had to decide whether following orders would save anyone at all. How do you aim at someone who taught you to pull the trigger? The hallway felt too narrow, too quiet. Dust hung in the air like ghosts listening. Marlowe's rifle was steady, but her heart was. Every breath came sharp, measured, the way it always did when she was seconds away from firing. Only this time the target was the man who taught her how. Ezra Finch stood still, hands raised, eyes soft in the flicker of a dying light. He looked smaller than she remembered, or maybe just more human. Behind her, the rest of the Guardian team fanned out, rifles trained. Target acquired, someone said through comms, awaiting green light. Marlowe keyed her mic, stand by. Static. Repeat, Finch, the voice snapped. Your command lead, confirm kill authorization. She didn't answer, not yet. Ezra's eyes didn't leave hers. You don't have much time, kiddo. Don't call me that, she said quietly. Still hate it, he smiled faintly. That's fair. Why did you disappear? Because staying meant becoming something I couldn't live with. The words hit harder than they should have. Marlowe took half a step closer, keeping her rifle level. You left without a word. Mom thought you were dead. He flinched, guilt flashing through his face. I know. I wanted to tell you both, but they were already watching. Anyone I talked to would have been marked. Marked by who? He nodded toward the ceiling, toward the invisible cameras she knew were already feeding back to command. You think you're working for them, Marlowe, but the Guardians don't serve the government anymore. They serve whoever funds the silence. That's a conspiracy, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. He smiled sadly. If it were, I'd be dead. Behind her, one of her team muttered, Command's getting impatient. What's the holdup? Marlowe ignored him. Ezra's voice softened. They sent you because they knew I wouldn't run from you. They knew I'd stop, talk, give you a story to make you pull the trigger. Stop, she whispered. You think Oakes didn't plan this, he said. He's been grooming you since the Ridge. You're his next prototype, a soldier who kills with a conscience but still follows orders. Shut up. Do you even know what the Guardian motto means anymore? Marlowe's hands trembled on the rifle. Balance and judgment. Balance, he repeated softly. Not justice, not humanity, just balance, the illusion of control. That's what they sell. Every time the world shakes, they pick who gets to survive the fall. Marlowe swallowed hard. You don't know what you're talking about. He took a slow step forward. The other Guardians aimed, lasers dancing across his chest. Stand still, Marlowe barked. Ezra stopped, hands still raised. Do you know why I trained you the way I did? Why I made you calculate, not react? Because I knew one day they'd try to use you like a weapon, and the only thing that could stop you was you. The words carved straight through her armor. Her radio hissed again. Raven 1, Command Green, execute. The order cold, final. She froze. Ezra's eyes softened. You've got a choice, Marlowe. Shoot me and prove them right, or listen and find out what I really came here to do. Her breath caught. Another voice on comms, sharp now, impatient. Finch, execute or we do it for you. The laser sights on his chest wavered. One twitch from her team and this would end. Stand down, she said into the mic. Negative, we have command clearance to fire. I said stand down. Her tone carried the weight of something older than rank. The others hesitated. Seconds, maybe less. Enough. Ezra whispered, downstairs, data core, it's proof. Files on every unauthorized operation they've buried. Names, locations, everything. You bring it out, you end this. End what? The illusion that anyone's still fighting for the truth. Footsteps echoed from deeper inside the bunker, more of them heavier, faster. Guardians' reinforcements. Ezra's eyes flicked past her shoulder. They're not here for me. They're here for the files. They'll erase this place before command has to explain it. The hallway erupted in gunfire. Bullets shredded the air, ricocheting off metal walls. Marlowe dropped, dragging her father behind a support pillar. Her team returned fire, shouting over comms. Multiple hostiles. Repeat, multiple Guardians inside perimeter. Copy, Raven 1, extract immediately. Marlowe fired 3 controlled bursts, dropping the first wave. The air filled with smoke and the acrid burn of gunpowder. Ezra reloaded an old pistol from his belt. That's their purge unit, he said. They're not leaving witnesses. Marlowe glared at him. You could have mentioned that sooner. I was hoping we'd talk longer, he said, firing a round down the hall. Guess family reunions never go smooth. Story of my life, she muttered, taking another shot. Follow me, he shouted, sprinting toward a side door. Her instinct screamed no, but something deeper said yes. She followed. They ran through twisting hallways, alarms wailing overhead. The floor shook. Somewhere explosives had gone off. The purge had begun. Marlowe's earpiece filled with static, then Oak's voice, calm, steady. Corporal Finch, stand down, you're compromised. Extraction team en route. Why send a kill team after your own? She shouted back. You don't have clearance to understand, Oakes said. Secure the rogue asset and withdraw. Asset, she repeated. That's what he is to you. Everything is an asset, he said softly, even you. The line went dead. Ezra stopped at a reinforced door marked Core Access. He slammed his hand against an old keypad. It beeped red. Code changed, he muttered. Marlowe stepped up, unslung her rifle and fired 3 quick rounds into the locking mechanism. Sparks burst. The door hissed open. Inside, the data core pulsed with blue light, servers stretching floor to ceiling, cables glowing like veins. On a console, a portable drive blinked. Ezra grabbed it. This is it. Proof they've rewritten global operations for decades, missions that never happened, soldiers they erased, wars they started just to fix later. Why me, she asked. Why drag me into this? Because you already saw what they're capable of, he said. You just didn't know what it meant. He turned toward her, drive in hand. Help me expose them, Marlowe. Don't make my mistake. Her radio crackled again, new voice, female, urgent. All units converge on core sector. Finch compromised. Terminate if necessary. She looked at her father, then at the door, then at the drive. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Every choice she'd ever made balanced on that second. I can't run from them, she whispered. Then don't, he said. Fight them. Gunfire tore through the doorway. Sparks rained down. Ezra shoved the drive into her hands. Go. What about you? He smiled, that same quiet, patient smile she remembered from childhood. Someone has to slow them down. Dad. Go. He turned, firing into the corridor, covering her retreat. Marlowe hesitated, every instinct screaming to stay. But she knew what that would mean. She ran. Through smoke and alarms, through the collapsing hallways of a world built on lies. She reached the surface just as the explosion hit, a shockwave that threw her to the ground, heat searing her back. The entire bunker erupted in fire. Marlowe rolled over, gasping, staring at the flames, devouring the only proof she'd had that he was alive. But the drive was still in her hand, warm, real. Her radio clicked. Oakes again. Finch, report. She didn't answer. Marlowe, his tone softened. I gave you a chance to belong, don't throw it away. She switched the radio off. Smoke curled into the sky, twisting like the ghosts of everything she'd just lost. She pushed herself up, staggering through the trees, every step heavier than the last. Somewhere behind her, helicopters thundered closer, Guardian choppers, sweeping lights through the dark, searching. She kept moving. When she finally collapsed in a clearing miles away, dawn was breaking again, pale gold spilling through the fog. She stared at the flash drive, its tiny light pulsing like a heartbeat. Her father's last words echoed in her mind, fight them. But fight who? Oakes, the Guardians, the idea that order still meant something. She didn't know. All she knew was this, truth had a cost, and she just paid it. The forest was quiet now, too quiet. A single beam of sunlight caught the flash drive in her palm, making it glow. In that light, it didn't look like evidence. It looked like a burden. Marlowe closed her hand around it and whispered to herself, not a prayer, just a promise. I won't disappear. Then she stood, alone in the rising sun, a fugitive from the very system she'd once trusted to define right and wrong. And somewhere, deep beneath the ashes of the bunker, her father's voice seemed to linger. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Where do you go when every compass points back to the people hunting you? The forest stretched for miles, endless green turning gold under morning light. Marlowe moved through it like a shadow, learning how to breathe again. Her body ached, her lungs burned, and the flash drive felt heavier with every step, though it weighed almost nothing. 2 days since the explosion. 2 days since her father vanished in fire. 2 days since the world stopped making sense. She'd slept in fragments, 20 minutes at a time, rifle across her chest, dreams full of voices that weren't dreams at all. Orders, warnings, echoes. By the third dawn, she found an abandoned ranger cabin half-collapsed under pine branches. Inside, dust and silence. A single metal table, a generator with half a tank of fuel and a broken radio. It was enough. She closed the door, slid the lock, and let herself breathe. Then she pulled the flash drive from her pocket and set it on the table like a relic. It blinked once, small and steady, as if it knew she was afraid to touch it. She stared at it for a long time before finally whispering, "Let's see what you died for, Dad." The generator coughed alive. She connected the drive to a battered field laptop she'd scavenged on the way, outdated, offline, safe. A folder appeared, Guardian Archive/Class Omega. The screen filled with encrypted files, operations logs, mission debriefs that didn't exist. She opened the first. Video feed, helmet cam. A Guardian unit clearing a village. No resistance, just civilians. The voice giving orders was familiar. Oaks. His tone was calm, detached. Authorization confirmed. Wipe all signatures. Frame insurgent activity. Leave 2 survivors. The footage cut out before the screams. She sat back, staring at the frozen image of Oak's face, half lit, half shadow. File after file told the same story. Covert manipulations disguised as humanitarian interventions. Balance operations that sacrificed hundreds to prevent political fallout. The Guardians weren't peacekeepers. They were editors, rewriting reality one quiet death at a time. By the 10th file, her hands were shaking. By the 20th, she couldn't feel them. She scrolled until a new label caught her eye. Project Seraph/Finch. Her pulse stopped. The document opened to a single image, her, years younger in training. Below it, data, reflex metrics, cognitive scores, field evaluations signed by Dr. Hale. Then the line that hollowed her out. Subject selected for emotional moral prototype. Operative capable of independent conscience-driven lethality. Intended successor to Ezra Finch. She whispered, "They built me." Not trained, built. Every decision she thought was her own, every assignment, every chance encounter, designed to shape her into the weapon they'd lost. Her father hadn't abandoned her. They'd taken her from him. She closed the laptop, trembling. The walls felt smaller now, the air heavier. Outside, a bird called once, sharp and lonely. Then she heard it, the distant thump of rotor blades. Her breath froze. They'd found her. She grabbed the drive, stuffed it into her vest, and slipped out the back window. The forest roared with wind as a helicopter swept overhead, searchlights slicing through the trees. She ran. Branches whipped her face, roots caught her boots, but she kept moving. Every instinct screamed, "Don't look back." Voices shouted through loudspeakers. "Corporal Finch, this is Captain Oaks. Stand down, you're not the enemy. We can fix this." Fix, that word. The same tone he'd used before every operation. Clinical, final. She pressed deeper into the woods. Bullets shredded bark around her. She dropped behind a fallen log, heart hammering, and fired 2 rounds at the spotlight. The beam shattered, the chopper veered. "Finch," Oak's voice again, closer this time, through calm frequencies she hadn't realized were still active. "Don't make me your enemy." She switched channels, static, silence, freedom. When the noise finally faded, she crawled into a ravine and waited until night. Only then did she let herself breathe again. The stars came out cold and clear. She built a small fireless shelter beneath a cliff, pulled the drive from her pocket, and stared at it under moonlight. Everything she'd seen replayed in her mind. Oak's calm voice ordering balance, her father's face in that last moment of defiance. What now? Expose them. Who would believe her? Every file, every video, Every word could be erased with one command from someone higher than Oak's. But maybe it wasn't about belief. Maybe it was about refusing to be quiet. She whispered into the dark. "You were right, Dad. Silence kills." By morning, she was moving again, north toward the border. She needed distance, altitude, perspective. Somewhere high enough that signals still carried but patrols didn't. 2 days later, she reached an old weather station on a mountain ridge. Abandoned decades ago, but the calm tower still stood, skeletal against the clouds. Inside, dust and cold. She powered the ancient transmitter with parts from the generator. Static filled the room like white rain. She tuned frequencies until one clicked, an encrypted military channel. "Guardian Command, this is Finch." Silence, then Oak's voice calm, almost gentle. "Marlowe, I'm glad you're alive." "Can't say the same." "Listen to me. You don't understand what's on that drive." "I understand plenty. There are files there that could collapse governments, destabilize entire regions. We don't create chaos, we prevent it." "You justify it." He sighed. "You sound like your father." "Thank you." "That's not a compliment." His tone hardened. "Return the data and I can guarantee your safety. You leak it and you start wars you can't control." "Maybe war's already started," she said quietly. "You just gave it a prettier name." "Marlowe." She cut the transmission. The silence afterward felt clean. She looked out through the cracked window. The valley below glowed under morning light. Villages, roads, people living their lives unaware that a shadow organization decided how long peace was allowed to last. She pulled the drive from her pocket again. Her thumb brushed the metal casing. The power to expose everything, yet destroy everything too. Her father's voice echoed, the conscience of the one holding it. She whispered, "What would you do?" The wind answered softly, bending the trees. By afternoon, snow began to fall, fine, quiet flakes. She was preparing to move again when she saw motion down the slope, two figures in gray guardian armor advancing carefully. Not a full team. Scouts. She could kill them, she could vanish, or she could finally stop running. Her pulse steadied. Decision came like calm water. She stepped out from cover, rifle slung, hands raised. They froze, one lifted his calm. "Command, we've got her." Marlowe said evenly, "Tell Oakes I want to talk. No guns, just truth." The soldier hesitated. "He'll never agree." "Then shoot me," she said, "but you'll lose what's on this drive." He looked at his partner. They lowered their weapons. Minutes later, the rotor thump returned, steady, heavy, inevitable. The helicopter landed in the clearing, snow swirling around it. Oakes stepped out, coat flapping in the wind, expression unreadable. He looked older now. Maybe guilt does that. "Marlowe," he said over the noise, "you could have run anywhere. Why call me back?" She held up the drive. "Because I don't want this to disappear in a file room. I want you to see what you built." He nodded slowly. "And then what? You think the world will thank you for showing it the truth. You'll drown it in panic." "Maybe," she said, "but panic's honest, silence is." He stepped closer. "You can't win this. Even if you broadcast it, they'll deny everything, erase you, rewrite history before the headlines print." Marlowe's eyes didn't waver. "Then at least history will have to lie louder." Oak studied her, no anger, just a strange kind of respect. "You really are Ezra's daughter." She took a breath. "You taught me to follow orders. He taught me to question them. Guess we'll see which lesson lasts longer." For a moment, the wind carried nothing but the sound of blades spinning. Oakes extended his hand. "Give me the drive, and I'll make sure you live to fight another day." She looked at it, then at him. Living, not the same as being alive. She pressed the small transmitter she'd hidden in her palm. A light blinked red on the tower behind them, broadcast mode. Oak's eyes widened. "What did you?" "The truth's already moving," she said quietly. "Every satellite in range just got a copy." He took a step forward, then stopped. There was no point, it was done. Marlowe turned away, walking toward the trees. Tell your superiors they can erase me, but they can't unsee what I showed them. Oakes called after her, voice almost lost to the wind. They'll come for you. She didn't look back. They already have. That night, somewhere far from the mountain, across networks and hidden servers, the data began to spread. Journalists woke to encrypted messages. Analysts found ghost files appearing on secure systems. Whispers turned into headlines no one could verify, but no one could silence either. And in the middle of it all, one name kept reappearing in the metadata: Finch. Marlowe hiked until her legs gave out, then stopped beside a frozen stream. She built a small fire, the first with flame since it all began. Its warmth felt unreal. She opened the locket she hadn't touched in years. Inside, a photo of her father holding her as a child. The edges were burned from the explosion, but the faces remained. She whispered, "I did what you couldn't." Wind carried her words across the dark water. For the first time in weeks, she let herself cry. Not for the mission, not for the lies, for the small truth inside all of it, that doing the right thing never feels right while you're doing it. She wiped her eyes, stared into the fire, and said softly, "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." And as the flames flickered against the snow, Marlowe Finch finally stopped running, not because she was safe, but because she'd chosen what she could live with. The world would decide the rest. What does victory look like when no one knows you won? The world didn't explode when the files went public. It shivered. Newsrooms cracked open like fault lines. Screens filled with fragments of something no one could fully prove, but everyone could feel: operations that never happened, missions without names, signatures without souls. Governments denied. Spokesmen stammered. Stock markets dipped, then steadied. Life went on. But beneath the surface, something shifted. People started asking, who decides balance? The Guardians went silent. Headquarters evacuated overnight. Records wiped. Personnel reassigned under new acronyms. The machine shed its skin and pretended it never existed. And Marlowe Finch vanished with it. 3 months later, in a fishing village off the Baltic coast, a woman with a limp and a quiet voice rented a room above a hardware shop. She called herself Anna. Paid cash. Fixed radios for the locals. Every morning she watched the sea. Every night she listened to static. Sometimes the broadcasts carried pieces of her past, reporters still dissecting the leak, debating authenticity, arguing over motives. Some called the whistleblower a hero. Others called her a traitor. Most just called her myth. She didn't correct them. The truth didn't need a face. One fog-heavy morning, she walked to the pier and found a newspaper folded on a bench. Front page headline: Captain Oaks found dead, apparent suicide. She stood there for a long time, eyes on the ink until it blurred. The article said little: disgraced intelligence officer, under investigation, personal struggles. No mention of the Guardians, no mention of her father, no mention of balance or judgment. History had already begun erasing itself again. She folded the paper carefully, tucked it into her coat pocket, and whispered, "I warned you, sir. The truth always costs more than you plan to pay." That night she dreamed of the ridge again, the sound of the rifle, the calm between heartbeats. Only this time, when she looked through the scope, she didn't see soldiers. She saw faces, every life caught between her choices. She woke before dawn, sweating, shaking. The ocean outside was black and endless. She turned on the radio. Static, then a faint male voice through distortion. Guardian frequency open. Survivors requesting contact. Finch, if you hear this. Her heart stopped. She turned the dial, catching fragments, coordinates, half-sentences, breath. Then silence. She replayed it in her mind. The tone, the cadence, older, rougher, but familiar. Her father. She sat there until morning light broke through the fog. Then she packed her rifle, the drive, a compass, and a single folded photograph. By noon she was driving east, through border towns and rain that blurred everything into watercolor. The road wound toward mountains that looked like memory, distant, cold, half-imagined. She followed the coordinates. Days passed, each one quieter than the last. The final stretch was on foot, a climb through pine forests and snowfields. She found the cave entrance hidden behind fallen rock, marked only by a rusted guardian insignia scratched into stone. Inside, darkness, then a flicker of light deeper in. "Dad," she called softly. The echo answered first, then a shadow moved. Ezra Finch stepped into view, thinner, slower, but alive. The firelight caught the lines on his face: grief, relief, disbelief. "I saw the broadcasts," he said quietly. "You did it." She tried to speak, but her throat closed. He smiled, the same weary, proud smile she'd carried for months. "You finished what I couldn't." She shook her head. "I started something I can't stop." He nodded. "That's how truth works. Once it breathes, it never dies. It just finds new lungs." She stepped closer, finally letting herself hug him. The smell of smoke and snow filled her senses, the smell of home she'd forgotten existed. "I thought you were gone," she whispered. "I was," he said, "until you reminded me why I left in the first place." They sat by the fire for hours, saying little. Words weren't enough. Silence did the talking, the kind that forgives without asking. When the fire burned low, Ezra opened a small case beside him. Inside lay an old Guardian transmitter, repurposed into something new, a beacon, stripped of encryption. "I've been using this to reach the ones who broke away," he said. "There aren't many left, but they still believe in what the Guardians were meant to be." "And what's that?" she asked. "Not control, not silence, just witnesses, people who act when others hesitate, without orders, without credit." Marlowe watched the weak blue glow of the beacon. It pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. "Ghosts," she murmured. "Maybe," he said, "but sometimes ghosts keep the living honest." Weeks passed. The cave became a safe house. They listened to the world through static, rebuilt what little tech they could salvage. Occasionally a new signal came through, a coded phrase, a ping, another voice joining the network. The beginning of something small and stubborn. One evening, as snow drifted outside the entrance, Ezra handed her a small envelope. "What's this?" "Something from before you were born," he said. "Your mother wrote it the night I enlisted." Inside, a single line in fading ink. "If our child ever grows up to hold a weapon, teach them that mercy weighs more than accuracy." Marlowe read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it with the photo. She looked at her father. "Do you think mercy and survival can exist in the same person?" He smiled softly. "Only in the rare ones, only in you." Spring came slow to the mountains. The snow thinned, streams broke open, and birds returned to places they once feared. Marlowe climbed to the ridge each morning, scanning the horizon with her scope, not for enemies anymore, but for signs of change. Convoys moving differently, borders unguarded, rumors of old alliances mending, small things, fragile things, proof that exposure hadn't destroyed everything. Some nights she still heard Oak's voice in her dreams, calm, persuasive, almost kind. Other nights she heard the screams from the compound, the ridge, the echo of gunfire. But more often now she heard silence, peaceful, earned. One morning she woke to find the beacon dark, batteries drained, the final light gone. She smiled. Maybe that was how it was supposed to end, not with transmissions or missions, but with quiet. She wrote a note in her journal, folded it beside the drive, and placed them together in a small metal box. Then she buried it under the cairn overlooking the valley. If someone found it someday, they'd have a choice: reopen the wounds or learn from them. Either way, truth would still be waiting. At dusk, she and her father sat by the fire again. The sky turned crimson, then indigo. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The uniform. The certainty." He thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but certainty's a kind of blindness. It's easier than truth, but it sees less." She nodded slowly. "I used to think courage meant not being afraid. And now I think it's doing the right thing while you're terrified." Ezra smiled. "That's closer." They sat in silence, listening to wind through the pines. After a long time, he said, "You know they'll keep rewriting history." "I know. And they'll keep hunting for whoever leaked it." "I know that too. So what will you do?" She looked at the horizon, where night was swallowing the last trace of sun. "Keep watch." Later, when he was asleep, she walked outside alone. The stars were bright enough to touch, the wind cold enough to remind her she was alive. She spoke softly to the dark, as if it could hear her. "To anyone still listening, balance doesn't come from control, it comes from choice. And choice only matters when it costs you something." She let the wind carry it away. Maybe someone somewhere would hear, maybe not. It didn't matter. Truth had already learned how to travel on its own. Months later, villagers down the valley began telling stories of a woman who watched the mountains, who fixed radios that shouldn't work, who sometimes disappeared for weeks and always came back with new scars and quieter eyes. They didn't know her name. They didn't need to. Some called her guardian. Others called her the ghost on the ridge. And on clear nights, when the wind shifted just right, you could hear a faint signal on forgotten frequencies. A woman's voice, calm and steady, repeating the same message over and over. "This is Finch. Balance isn't silence. Over." The world never officially thanked her. It never officially forgave her either. But somewhere between those two silences, Marlowe Finch finally found what she'd been chasing since the day no one saw her at the briefing table. Peace. Not the kind written in treaties or mission reports. The kind that comes from knowing you did what conscience demanded, even when no one was watching. She exhaled into the cold air, her words vanishing into stars and thought. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.